All right. So this is Sasha, and welcome to the channel.
Thank you for inviting me, Angelo. It's very, very exciting to be here. It's
It's nice. It's nice to have you.
quite an honor, I have to say. I've been following you
Oh,
for some time, and yeah, if you told me if I don't know a year ago that I'd be sitting here being interviewed by you, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I don't know. It's bizarre. It's very, very everything's very, very surreal at the moment. So anyway,
I
I'm
love it.
talking too much already. Carry on.
So, well, we met, I think, for the first time in person at a retreat a few weeks ago.
That's right.
Is that the first time we had talked or
I
anything?
think we've
Okay, yeah,
probably
I thought so.
Facebook chatted about tiny things, but not a proper chat. No, that was the first time we actually spoke like human beings. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So, what led you to watching this stuff? Or you
oh
said about a
God.
year ago.
So
So,
now we,
before a year ago, did you have contact with any spiritual
oh,
stuff? Or
well, loads. And this is where it gets really, really weird because now I'm going to tell a big story about how I got into this, and already
Mhm.
that feels weird where I am right now.
Yeah,
But well, I'm jumping the gun.
why is
So,
that?
sorry, you get what I'm
What?
talking about.
Oh, I do. Why is that? Just for people watching.
Just because right now it just feels like any story I tell right now, I don't know where it's coming from, and I don't even know if it's true, and I don't know whether it really happened. And um, right now in this moment, it doesn't make sense to tell any story. It's almost like I'm just going to put some words on top of what's here, and
Mhm.
they're never going to be. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. It's like I feel like anything I say, Angelo, is just it's just not it. I just kind of want to sit here. Oh, there's a weird thing because there's like this self part of me that's going, tell a big story and impress Angelo and impress all the people and tell all the big story about what you've done. And the other part of me is
Yeah.
just going,
Yeah.
yeah, just smile.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the an important or salient point to what you're saying is that there's this very and welcome to my world, by the way.
Yeah,
There's nothing to say, and yet for some reason my mouth moves and words come out. So, but there's this very obvious knowing that the story or the narrative or anything we can talk about isn't really it. It's not what's what. It's not what's this is. Which we can't talk about. It's so much more obvious, and yet we talk and we tell stories sometimes.
yeah,
But it's what's clear. What's clear, at least from what you just said, to me, it sounds like it's clear is what's primary and most real is really what can't be talked about, and it's the
yeah.
loudest thing in the room, so to speak. Yeah. So
It's...
I just wanted to clarify that and why you said that for anyone listening.
Okay, right. Sorry, I probably jumped the gun there
Yeah.
because I probably do need to give some backstory because people will tune into this and go, what the flipping heck? Or maybe they won't because they've been watching you
Yeah.
for a while, so they know how these things go.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, I think it would be nice to hear just a little bit about it because it's always fun to kind of see
Yeah.
how things play out.
So I'm no stranger to this stuff, really. If you can see the books on the back of the wall, those are a bunch of books I've written on kind of spiritual self-helpy stuff. I'm a kind of a self-help writer, and it all started back in 1960. No, I'm not going to go back that far. Back in I went to university. I'm not going to give a really long story to bore people. Just a little bit of backstory. I went to university to study philosophy, and I did really well in philosophy. Ended up doing a PhD, all sorts of stuff. And I studied a branch of philosophy which was particularly analytical, the sort of the study of building rational argument on top of starting from first principles and building a rational argument to get to truth. Because if you start with first principles and you build rationally, then yes, you have absolute knowledge, don't you? Like kind of starting with something like I think, therefore I am, because obviously that's true, isn't it? You start something like with that, and then you build on that. So whatever you have is an absolutely watertight, true thing. And I studied that for a while until I started to go a bit mad. The philosophy was tying me up in knots, and my mind was just killing me, really. Because philosophy can just, yeah, you can just construct a rational argument for anything and then give a counterexample and tie yourself on top, argument on top of argument on top of argument. And I went a little bit, when I say I went a little bit mad, what I meant was I didn't literally go mad. I started to suffer very badly with depression, and insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
And insomnia was my route into all this, really, because I suffered very badly with insomnia at university and started to look into self-help stuff, I suppose. That was my foray into self-help. I ended up overcoming my insomnia. I wrote some quite well-known books on insomnia, and I overcame it. The depression remained, and I sort of carried on the spiritual path. And I suppose what happened was, how can I put this best? I started to read very basic spiritual books, and I have to admit, my first kind of foray into this stuff was like law of attraction stuff, like The Secret and things like that. And that really appealed to me because it just felt so magical and so amazing. So I read these books, and although I couldn't really make them work, I could make something work. And it felt like I kind of was getting I was actually kind of learning to manipulate my experience almost. And I left books, I left the law of attraction behind, but I went on with something I called magic. And I started to write books about what I called magic, just because I couldn't explain what was going on. And it seemed to me that magic was a really good term for this weird stuff that I couldn't put my finger on. And when I called it magic, it seemed to work better because that let my mind give up. So, so I've been writing about magic for ages.
I can relate a little bit to what you're saying about that transition between trying to work out really you and life through your head completely in logic and the bindings of like literally logic, right? Deductive logic and so forth. Like I did that in college as well. And going from there to, I can see how the law of attraction is a sort of segue, because it's like, okay, well, maybe you can actually have an effect somehow outwardly, like somehow not all up here in your head, but like engage life directly somehow, and maybe even, I don't talk about law of attraction, but it does have a sort of focusing your attention somehow, toward an intention, and those sorts of things start to feel a little bit more like not just completely up in your head, but somehow outward and moving into life and engaging in a different way. So I can see that segue. Anyway, I just wanted to reflect on that.
So it's interesting because what I did notice about this is really important, because what I've read, what I gleaned from the law of attraction stuff, and actually right from back when I was overcoming insomnia, was I basically came up with like this little rule in my head. It was partly what I was reading, but partly I just kind of like discovered it. And I discovered this thing called letting everything be okay. And letting everything be okay just meant when I stopped trying to control everything, things seemed to get better. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just like life became easier and things seemed to start going my way. I began to sleep better. And also it kind of, because I was in the law of attraction sort of field at that point, that was kind of like my framework for explaining it. So it seemed to me that when I let everything be okay, I manifested stuff. That's how it seemed. So that was the way I described it. And I got good at it. I changed my life. I got rich and I overcame my problems and I got a really nice partner and I paid off my debts and everything seemed to pick up when I did this weird thing called letting everything be okay. But as time went on, I kind of, other sort of like little things were coming through. The reading I was doing was becoming more sophisticated. And I started to move away from this business of making the outside world better, because somewhere I just realized that's not it. That's just not it. But something's happening here. So basically for 10 years, I've been sort of, something's happening and I'm trying to explain what's happening. And I wrote books about it, and I've been writing books and books and books and books and books and become reasonably successful at that. And then I started to I don't know how I fell completely into non-duality. And I don't know how that happened. I started to read all sorts of, Tony Parsons, Jeff Foster, all these people, came across your book. And it's just been it's almost like I don't want to I know we're not supposed to talk about a path, but it seems like I've been on a path, and my understanding has just been maturing, maturing, and maturing, and maturing. So now I've got to a stage where I look back on my old days of the law of attraction, and it's really weird because what I was saying then and what I was reading there, that in a sense, it wasn't wrong. It was kind of, there were seeds of all of this. There were seeds of all of this right back then. So when I said let everything be okay, and then everything will be okay, there was some real truth in that. And it's almost like I didn't know it at the time. It's God, so much. There's like so much to say and yet nothing to say. It's so weird. So I'm rambling a bit. I'm sorry if I'm.
No, you're doing fine. So it's interesting that people definitely stumble upon aspects of this thing we're talking about, this realization process, whatever. People stumble on aspects of it, and even through law of attraction or even philosophy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's why I kind of just use these very general terms like orient yourself to truth, knowingly orient yourself to living truth, whatever that is, however that works for you. But be willing to let go of your beliefs about it and let the process keep carrying you deeper. And these sort of serendipities happen. You stumble upon this. Oh, well, maybe if I just let everything be okay. And then it starts to feel like, wait, everything is okay. Like, wow. And this life is just flowing,
Yeah.
And so I see that reasonably frequently where, this is why I kind of say, like, I can't teach you anything you need to know about awakening and realization. You already are it. It's just a matter of sometimes just getting over your own self-doubt, really, or getting out of your head and starting to really trust yourself in life.
What's really weird, Angelo, is that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this or anybody watching this has noticed, but we keep jumping ahead because I haven't really talked about, I don't know, the insight I had after I met you and blah, blah, blah. But what I keep noticing is that I'll watch films, for example, and there will be like these messages, these sort of like truths in the film script. People will say things, and I'm thinking, either the director of this film is completely enlightened, whatever that means, or more the point, this is a theory of mine, so I'm a philosopher, so I love theories. I think that this truth is something on some level we all know. We all know it. And it's almost like we know it, but we don't know we know it. So bits of it are creeping through all the time. It's like it's flashing at us. It's like it's going...
And that's the value of art. That, to me, I see that. You notice in my book, I don't only quote spiritual people and scientists. I quote artists a lot, musicians, and I use song lyrics. I see that all the time. And I have a theory about it, another theory that's a little bit of an aside. But one of the reasons I think artists suffer so much, like really, really suffer in the physical realm, is partially because when they produce their art, when they pick up the guitar and they play and they just sing and they're with the audience, or when they act and they go into character, all the various ways that art comes forward, they feel the truth of it. It feels completely true. It feels like I'm not there, like something's coming through. But then often in other parts of their lives, it's very, very hard to access that. And in fact, things are like the opposite. Like that's why there's like substance abuse problems. And it's very, very frustrating, I think, when you feel that purity in one part of your life and you can't find it in other parts of your life. And to me, that's the value of making awakening and realization central in your life, because you can actually experience it in all areas of your life, of course, because it's your true nature. But I do see very clear expressions coming through in art, in songs a lot of times. One line of a song, like a heavy metal song sometimes. The song by Ronnie James Dio, Rainbow in the Dark, he has some really good lines in there. Like one is, "You're just a picture, an image caught in time." Like what you take yourself to be is just this flash and it feels real when you believe it. But when you start to see past that, it's like, whoa,
Wow.
You're seeing out of time all of a sudden.
So when he wrote that lyric, that's what he was, that's what he was seeing. That was truth for him. That was truth. And he wrote it down. Isn't that amazing? It's almost like it's all here. It's almost like it's shouting at us, trying to say, look, I'm here, guys.
And the deeper realization goes, the more it's so obvious that everything is literally waking you up. It's not a poetic thing I'm saying. Literally, everything you look at, if you if you look at it the right way, and the right way is empty of you, the right way is with reverence, the right way is with unconditional love, the right way is with radical vulnerability and openness. If you look at anything that way, it's speaking to you in a language that's so much more real
Yeah.
than your mind could ever begin. And you, when you think of like animism, you know, it's funny, like from like say a Christian mindset, animism is so silly and archaic or something to think the tree is alive. Like, wow, how could a Native American think that? But we believe this like image that we make of God that looks like a person, a male person, like so ego based, right?
Yeah.
And then we think animism is silly, but when realization deepens, you see animism is very real. Like you feel the aliveness in everything, and you have a reverence for it. It's amazing. Like trees, the sky, the sidewalk, literally everything is just alive. But you have to get past your own identity, especially mental identity, first off, to really start to feel that. But you know all this now. So I want to ask you, we had a conversation. This video started, I made this suggestion to do this recording because we had a conversation at the last retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty simple. I actually posted it not too long ago. It was a simple exchange. But I remember
it felt like longer at the time. It was only a few minutes, yeah.
It was a few minutes, yeah. But there was I remember a salient point in the conversation and some belief or something that kind of got challenged or something in our conversation. And then later you emailed me, I don't know, a week later or something, and you're like, okay, well, that did it.
Yeah, it was
that unwound everything somehow.
So bizarre, because I sat down and I talked to you, and because you had that morning we'd done a guided meditation, and that morning you talked about this neutral space, and only you and I think Rupert Spira have ever talked about this neutral space. And this neutral space was a big thing for me, because the neutral space is, for what I'm sure some of your followers have heard you talk about this, there's kind of a space of open consciousness where everything just feels like there's nothing much there. There's just a neutralness. There's no pulling. There's no pushing. There's not much going on. And it just feels kind of neutral. And that was the space that the first time I learned meditation years back, I was doing transcendental meditation to try and help me sleep better. And I'd bang up against this neutral space. And I'd banged up against it so many times, I gave up on meditation. In fact, I started to complain about meditation and tell people that, meditation is not for everyone, because it's not for me, because I bang up against this neutral space. And I kept finding myself in this same place. So it's almost like when anybody mentioned it, something would go off in my head, like, but that, it's not like that for me, you see, because I've got this my neutral space is different to your neutral space. And
terminal uniqueness.
I'm a bit special, don't you realize? My neutral space.
I knew you were special the moment I met you on stage. I was sure of it.
I got a special neutral space, mine, and nothing gets past it. Mine's a bit more, it's neutral, but it's a bit more solid than anyone else's. And the thing is, because for 20 years that had been there every time I tried to meditate, it had become so real. I didn't know there was a belief in there. So I didn't know there was a belief. It sounds crazy that now not to realize there was a belief in there. But the belief, okay, that neutral space doesn't work for me, because whenever I go there, it's really boring and really dull, and I just sit there waiting. That belief, I didn't know it was a belief. I just thought
Isn't that crazy?
That was just truth for me.
This is why I rail on beliefs so much. Not rail on like they're bad, but I point, like in my book, I have a chapter about it. I talk about it in the very first chapter. Like, if you have rigid beliefs, if you're not willing to question your beliefs, I'm just planting seeds, because you have to at some point really start questioning your very fundamental beliefs. The beliefs that, even though they're really uncomfortable, even if it's the overriding belief in your life that you think is the biggest problem, you're actually holding on to that belief because you're afraid of letting it go, because you're afraid of the unknown and the mystery you're gonna walk right into the moment you let go of it. So beliefs are extremely binding. And in the way I'm talking, a belief is simply a thought unexamined. that you're holding and it feels like you. But again, it feels like it's kind of back here. It's in the view you're forming about literally anything, but about meditation in this case, or about this neutral space. But what's so funny about, I love this conversation and I love this neutral space we're talking about, because to the mind, I know even as you were speaking, I want to like say this for anyone watching, to the mind, I know this doesn't sound interesting. This neutral space we're talking about, you all know, everyone knows it's there, right? It can't not be there. It's the neutral space between the rubber band being stretched this way and that way. It's the neutral space when the wind stops blowing for a moment, it's quiet in your mind, whatever. But it's uninteresting because it has no content. The egoic mind values content, and it actually needs content to keep pushing and pulling on itself. But as it pushes and pulls on itself, the sense of you as the pusher and puller gets so wound up in it, you don't see what's right in front of your face. And what's right in front of your face is miraculous. Yeah. But it has to come from that neutrality. That's the lens through which you start to really wake up or whatever. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And yet, in one sense, it offers nothing. I can't promise you what it means because it doesn't mean anything. And yet, go there.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's there, yeah.
So, so my mind with the neutral space was saying, there's nothing here. So look into the neutral space. So where is it? Where's the thing he's pointing to? Okay, I'm in the neutral space. So, where's my prize? I'm here. I did what you said. I got into the neutral space. So where's my cookie? Where's my present? Where's my prize? Give it. And that little thought, just that little thought saying, okay, so what's next? What's next? What's next? And that was just enough. That little thought. And because it was so familiar to me, this is the weird thing. You don't realize these things are beliefs. You think they're just true. So I thought, I'm completely open to examining my beliefs. Yeah, I will examine my beliefs about, society and the world and God and myself and blah, blah, everything. But you don't, there are beliefs that seem so true to you. You've never stopped to consider that was actually a belief, that was even a thought. You don't even know that was a thought. You just think that's just how the way things are. So what you did is you just said something like, what if, it was a bit Byron Katie-ish, who would you be without that belief, or something like that? Or what would be here without that belief? What would be here if that belief weren't here? Or what would be here if that belief weren't true? Or something like that. And I'd never considered that.
I also remember telling you when you said, I get bored there, I get bored. And I remember that exchange very clearly. And I remember the feeling that, wow, you really believe this. And I told you that. I said, I can tell you really believe this. And you're a really smart person. Like I said, something like, you have a very sharp intellect. I didn't know anything about you, but I could tell I can tell talking to you. I said, you have a sharp intellect, and that's great. But, and that's a big but, it fools itself. The sharp intellect will fool itself and hide the one. It will hide the one thing from itself that it can hide to keep itself safe or whatever. But I remember telling you, I can tell you believe in this boredom thing. Like I'm bored with this. This isn't interesting or whatever. And I don't know what I said exactly, but it was kind of like, look into it. Look into, how do you know you're bored? And I love how you said, yeah, I'm willing to examine, I'm a philosopher. I'll examine the truth about truth and, God and logic and the mind and all of it. I love that. I love metaphysics. I love epistemology. But will you actually question the belief that says I'm bored right now? Will you question the belief that says the emotion I'm feeling is actually there, or I'm the one feeling it? Like those really close beliefs that, again, just as you said, it doesn't feel like a belief. It feels like, in one sense, it feels like me. It feels like the way the world is, but the way the world is always tainted by me.
The way the world is. That's a really good way of putting it. It's just the way the world is. That's just what's here right now. There's boredom here. That's
for me. I don't care if the world's like that for you or you or you or you or the other billions of people. But for me, that is the way the world is. But we don't see the me part. We just see that the world just seems like that way. The example I might use is like, for someone to relate would be, if you just really don't like a certain person, whatever, that person at work, in your mind, up and down exactly why you're right about this. They're an asshole. They do this and this and this. They're selfish. They're narcissistic. Like, I know they're just objectively not a good person. Like, you don't realize how you think there's a person out there called that person that has all these qualities you're putting on them. And there may be a person out there that's like that in various ways or whatever, but you're not seeing them. You're seeing your own view, and you're holding very, very tightly to it. And that applies to all kinds of things, politics, all this, but it really applies to ourself, right? We're kind of scared to question our own most closely held, even mundane beliefs, because, well, shit, what's going to be there when we start letting go of that? And when you're ready to look there, and you were obviously ready, that's when those kind of questions are very powerful.
And here's the funny thing, because on some level I know I'm quite a clever person, and because I wrote books on this stuff, what you just said there about, I was the one who said, yeah, well, I do examine my beliefs. I'm not somebody who judges people at face value. I realize there's a person under there. I realize that this is my view of them. And I know this stuff. And what would always come up was, I know this bit. I know this bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know this bit. Angelo said this. Yeah, I've read this before. I know this. I write about this. I mean, I'm an expert in this, aren't I? And that is so dangerous when you think you know stuff. You think that thought, I know this bit, is so, it's a massive pretender. It's like such, it's just not even smoke and mirrors. It's just like a liar. It's just like,
and it's very sticky. It has a stickiness to it. It's, if you're threatened on it directly, either threaten yourself on it or challenge yourself on a very fundamentally held belief, you will know it's a fundamentally held belief because you will have a physical reaction to it. Yeah. Like you just will. You'll feel it. You'll feel something that's going, no, I don't want to look here. Like, no, I know this is, and so that's a good indicator as well, that something in you is just like, not wanting to see it, like getting around it, going this way, that way, but not wanting to look right at it. And if you feel that cognitive dissonance, that's a good thing. Look there when it comes to this type of stuff. When it comes to really looking into your identity. And I loved the conversation. It just, I had it that when you got up, I remember when you stood up, I was like, something happened. I don't know what it was, but you were just like, okay. Yeah. And you were going to go process it. I could just tell that something clicked in because of the way it flowed. Yeah.
So I got up from that and I really listened to what you'd said, because that was something I hadn't considered before. It had kind of cut right through that I know this bit stuff. I know the neutral space. You'd cut through that. And I started to, I just sort of let it filter through. And that belief fell away. And what happened as a result was, it's almost difficult to talk about, but weird stuff started happening after that conversation at the retreat. And one of the first things that happened, I can only describe, the weird sensory changes started to happen. And one in particular was everything became HD. Does that make sense to you? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean, to the point where you can look across a field, like 100 meters away, and you see a building, and you feel like you can see every piece of the cement on the side of that building. It's like very, very clear.
It was like if you got the difference between a really old crappy television from like 1972, and then you got the biggest HD television that you get in those big posh shops that cost about 10 grand for this huge television. The difference in picture between the two. That was how reality suddenly became all here and like super crystal clear, like clarity I didn't know existed. It was like I was in a film and I was the film and I was directing the film and I was the whole thing. It was just the weirdest thing. I can't put into words what it was. I was in it, but I wasn't me anymore. And I kind of that during the retreat, that was coming and going and coming and going, this weird sudden crystal clear reality where I kind of dropped out for a moment. But it was only kind of like fleeting. It was in and out and in and out and in and out. And it was actually when I got home and I had a chat with Zubin on the last day. And he said to me, and I said, God, this has been such a brilliant retreat. This has been the best retreat I've ever been on, blah, blah, blah. And he said, it hasn't even started yet. He said, you wait a couple of days, you get home. Or he said, it'll be on the trip home or something like that. And it'll suddenly all come in. And it was exactly like that. Because I think it was 2 days later. It took me quite a long time because I had a big old flight and it was a horrible trip home. It must have been the day, maybe 2 days later. I sat there I was sitting in a coffee shop, just kind of like, blissing out a bit. I don't know, reading some books or doing a bit of writing or something. And that's when I suddenly realized that all beliefs are false. That all the beliefs I had, that's the only way I can describe it. It was like, oh, it wasn't just that belief in the way. All of them. They're all rubbish. They're all in the way. All the beliefs are in the way. All of them. I could just see that any belief at all, anything that came in, any belief, no longer could kind of like get hold. It couldn't. I mean, and that lasted for I don't know how many days. I was just like, nothing had a grip on me. Nothing could come in and pull me away. It was just like they were just thoughts. Oh my God, they were all just thoughts that I thought were true. And oh God, so
or false, even like that they had a truth value at all, that
sorry?
they mean any.
Oh, they're not even false. No, because to say they're false gives them a truth value. They're not. They're nothing. They're just things that happen.
Ghosts or clouds. Yeah.
It's just stuff that happens, and at this point, it gets to the stage where there's not much more. It's almost becomes really difficult to talk about.
Yeah. But I want to make one point about this too, that at least I can feel it as you're saying it. So you can maybe endorse or not, but someone might be watching this who has not gone through this, and they can for sure. You might be asking yourself, well, if all these beliefs about who I am, where I came from, what's true, what's not true, if that's just floating away, and that used to define what I am or who I am or how I feel, what's left when that goes away? Is it like I go away? Or is it more like just this vast presence? Because to me, it's just, that's what's so amazing about it, is there's this vast presence remaining, but it's not definable. It's just not definable. You're not enclosed in anything. There's no need to even talk about you versus not you versus here or there, a center or no center. It's that clarity is so brilliant, but it's literally impossible to talk
really
about.
Strange. It's like you're still here. I mean, you're definitely. It's not like you die. It isn't like you die, but it's like what you thought you were is no longer there. And what's really weird is what you thought you were never really was there, and that's the freaky bit. It's so freaky. And even now, as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing I've just told a big story. Did any of that actually happen? Or am I just saying some words now? Is it just happening? So it's just like, or is it just happening now? And then I thought now, and then I thought now, and then I thought now. I've told a story, but in this moment,
it's like it's erased.
Where has it got? Where it's not here. Yeah. It never was, and it never was here. It gets so paradoxical that that's why the words just fail you, because the paradoxes are just tumbling on top of each other and just shut up now, because this is just bollocks. Sorry.
But it definitely transmits, and it has that feel. It's just like an eraser that's just always erasing or coming into being and disappearing simultaneously. Yeah. I mean, there's no way to talk directly about it, and yet it feels so clear and obvious and natural, and it has the qualities that we've always sort of known are true, like spontaneity. Although no quality defines this, there's a spontaneity, a flow, a fluidity, and non-discernment. There's no need to discern. You don't have to decide what's me and what's not me, what to use a song lyric, what to leave in, what to leave out. You don't have to worry about that, because there's just no need for any of that. And it's very freeing. Yeah.
It's just, you end up saying things like, it's just this. And it's just stuff happening. And it all sounds really boring. I can imagine how dull. No wonder I thought it was dull, because it just sounds so dull. And yet when you hear it, it's really way more fascinating. You talk a lot about mystery, and I talk about magic, and I can completely see that this is, there's such a mystery here. There's such a and this is where I kept getting caught up, because I wanted to know. I wanted to know what it was like to be enlightened, or what it was like to see the truth, or what it was like. And there isn't a what it's like. It's not like anything. It's not alike. It's and I forgot what I was saying now. Well, where was I? I was going to say I was going to lead that was going to lead somewhere, but it's already gone. It's
It doesn't have to lead anywhere. That was beautiful.
it's already
It's
gone.
exactly right. There's no, what I picked up as you were speaking is this sense. Well, for one thing, I see it as an obstruction for many people, not all people. Some people don't do this at all with this process stuff, but some people really do. They really want to know what it's going to be like. And I can tell by the way they ask the questions or the way they write in the forums. And it's like, they want to know like all the nuances of deep stage realization, all this. And I'm like, I know that's interesting to you. I know it has an interest. Like I know part of you is like exuberated by that, but that's not what you really want. I don't think. If you want to know it, you've got to let go of that grasping with your mind. You have to let go of the insistence to understand it. You will never understand this that we're talking about. If you're listening to this video, you cannot understand this. That doesn't mean I know something or Sasha knows something you don't. That's not at all what I mean. It's quite the opposite. You think you know something, or you think you're going to learn something that's going to get you somewhere, but that's what's preventing you from letting go in the way you really want to.
Oh God,
You want to go here because because you've never left here. Again,
so
paradox,
weird.
paradox, paradox.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
all paradox, but it's so beautiful and it's so tactile. I mean, you can feel it, right? Like it's just
It's like all the
alive.
things we think we know, and all the things we think we want to know, and all the things that are important, all the meaning that we think is, and all the purpose. Here's a weird thing. I wrote this down on I've got a little blackboard in my kitchen that I write, like, sometimes I write, like, like pretty spiritual, pretentious sounding. But anybody that comes into my kitchen must think I'm the most pretentious person in the world. I write these things down that occur to me. I've written down, there's no such thing as because it suddenly dawned on me, all these times we say because. I did that because. He did that because of that. I have to do this because blah, 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 blah. It suddenly became meaningless to me. There's no such thing as because. There's no because. Nothing happens because of anything else. There's no because.
I know. It's so funny. And it can make it a bit challenging to communicate with people sometimes when you're especially when you're close to somebody and you want to be really deeply authentic with your communication. And, it's like, well, why did you do that? And sometimes, it's like, well, I did it because of this and this, but other times it's like, you can feel the stickiness around that. It's harder to go into complicity with people at some point. It's like, well, there's not really a because. It's just what I did. It's just what happened. It's just how this is playing out. And it's fine. It's fine here. It's fine there. People make mistakes. People do this and that. But the truth of it is the because is really a tagline that gets you into that mental process. It gets attention bound up into thought, doership, and past and future, right? It's like immediately once you're in past and future, you're in la la land,
And because it's got importance in it, it's like it drags you in. It's important. Somehow there's an importance to because, and it drags you back into the thought, drags you back in again. Whereas there's no need for because. You just sit here and I don't know. It's just weird stuff's happening, and it does sound so dull. And I wish I could make it sound more exciting. And here's the weird thing: I've written all these bloody words. I've written 1 million words on spiritual stuff, and now that I've seen this, I just feel like I've got nothing else to say. How does Angelo teach? Where does he find the words? Because all you do is sit here and go, it's just this. Everything. It's just everything.
Yeah.
You end up sounding like Tony Parsons. It's just everything being everything, or it's nothing being nothing, or everything's being nothing, or nothing's being everything, and nothing's going on. There's no one here, and you might as well all go home. And it just all starts to sound really dull. And it's not. This is the point. It's not dull. It's when you can open up to this is what I wanted to talk about, the mystery thing. When you can open up to just the mystery, like not trying to understand it, not trying to get it, not trying to see something, but just going, okay, I just give up. I just really, really give up.
Yes.
The mystery just
When I start talking or hearing about this mystery in this way, in this authentic way, it's really like a lover. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but at some point you get tired of the known, or what you think the known is. You get tired of the binding of mind, and there's nowhere else you can go but into the unknown, into the mystery. and it has a feel to it. It's, I don't know how else to say it. It feels like falling in love in a way, or falling in, but it's definitely mysterious. It's definitely into the unknown. Every step in our life is into the unknown.
Yeah.
When you look at animals, if you love animals, like if you love to watch animals, you see that's how they function. It's so beautiful. They're so natural, but they just move into the unknown all the time. They may have instincts and so forth, but it's not a conscious aware thing. They're just moving, and the environment and the animal is so seamless, and we as humans can actually relearn to do that, to be that way, to be that fluid. And when you ask how I teach, that's it, because I can't teach anything. All I can do is point to what's natural, and it's in you, right? So it's just a responsiveness. Yeah. I could never say the things I said before. From this moment on, I have no idea what I'll ever say, ever. The words come or they don't, but it doesn't really matter. But boy, this thing, this life movement, this mysterious whatever, is so beautiful. It's really, it feels like, to me, it feels like unconditional love. It just feels like the unconditional love of experiencing.
Like, it is for me. I like it just feel like magic. It's like, this is true magic. This is what magic really is. Magic is just an utter trust that whatever is, I can't put this into words, Angelo. It's like a trust that goes way beyond the concept of trust. Isn't even enough. And I've talked about trust in my books for 10 years. I've talked about how important it is to trust and how powerful the notion of trust is. But this is beyond. This is like trust exponentially times to the power of 1 trillion. This is like trust gone mad. It's like utter, complete, I don't know, beyond surrender.
It is. And it's trust coming from up here in a mental way. Trust that I will get the things I want, or I'll understand the things the way I think I need to understand them. And it's much more of a physical and organic trust.
Yeah.
It's manifesting as life right now. And it's exactly it. It's a trust. It's a dance. It's a dance with the mysterious.
Yeah.
And it's right in front of your face, actually, for anyone listening. And I know also
sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I know that when we talk like this, it can sound, some people, and I see it, I just know responses, but some people will see and hear this and feel like almost jealous. Like, I want that. Why don't I get that? I've been working, I've been practicing, I've been, what we're talking about sounds special. But the funny thing is, just see through the belief you have in your own competitiveness, or that someone else has something you don't. Those beliefs are binding you. See through those, and this will be naturally revealed, because it's right where you are.
It really is.
It's really that simple, but it requires surrender. Adyashanti talks about surrender over and over, and it's a damn good word for this, because as you said, you really have to give up, and give up meaning give up on your own belief that you're going to make life and reality work for you in the way you think it needs to, because you will always be looking from beliefs. And as you mentioned before, at some point you will see they're all false in one sense. And once you cross that gateless gate, it will be revealed to you. But you have to go in defenseless. You have to go in surrendered and vulnerable.
And what's amazing is those beliefs. What it looks like to me now is that that belief can be wafer thin, whisper. It's a whisper thin thought. Just that tiny thought that says, this isn't it. This isn't it. Mm-hmm. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough to take you. You've got everything we've been talking about, and you've got suffering. And that tiny whisper thin belief is enough to make the difference. Yeah. It's so.
Yeah. What you're pointing at is doubt. And it's true. Doubt is I have a fascination with doubt, because, Zen talks a lot about it. They call it like doubt mass. And it makes it sound like this big thing, but it's not a big thing when you see it for what it is. But it has a lot of influence when you don't see it for what it is. Influence on your attention and influence on your experience of self and the world. And what you're pointing at, man, open your ears, anyone listening, because what you're pointing at is so true. It is paper thin, the difference between being the frustrated spiritual seeker, working hard, and convincing yourself you're doing everything you can and working hard and wanting it and really wanting it. The difference between that and what we're pointing at here, this simplicity, this mystery, is actually seeing that thin skin of doubt that says, nope, couldn't be it. Couldn't be me, not me. That's them, not me. I don't deserve it. I don't, whatever you could unpack it into, but it's really a thin skin of doubt. And just seeing that is one single thought.
Yeah, it's
right
one
now.
thought.
Gone. It can be gone like that, but you have to really see it and be willing to enter the mystery when the one that doubts itself gets put on the shelf and you walk into the mystery, into the unknown. And everyone can do this.
Whatever your mind is telling you about the fact that it's not here, whatever it's telling you, it's not here. I'm not spiritual enough. I haven't done enough work. I'm not there yet. I'll get there one day. Or I need to do more reading. Or I need to do this. Or I get that but. Or I know that bit but. Whatever it's telling you, just let it go. Because it's here. Whatever thought is in your mind telling you this isn't it, that's the thought that's in the way. That's the thought, always, that's in the way. Whatever thought, even the thought that says, I really want to see this, but whatever it is, that thought, oh God, and it's when you can let that, when you can, I don't know how you do it.
What's interesting about thought? What's interesting about thought is like, I have these conversations so frequently with people close and working through this stuff, and the stickiness of thought is fascinating. And what I'll say, if you're following this conversation, is that what we're talking about here is what makes you believe, like look into what makes you believe a thought. Pick a thought in your mind. It might say, I'm bored, I'm confused, I can never get past this barrier, I doubt that this can happen for me. Whatever the thought is, if you can pick up on what we're saying, just look at what the thought actually is and see what is making that feel real to me right now. And you might notice it's a kind of relationship. You believe it, but you're kind of holding a distance from it. You're kind of afraid of it, actually. You're kind of having a reaction to it. And when you see it's a thought clearly enough times, and the right thought, and the one that's really binding you in that moment, that's why my pointing is simple. Just keep noticing everything that is arising in your mind as a thought, every perception, every view, all of it. But what happens is you stop, you let go of the relationship with thought.
Yeah.
You let go of the need to like discern this thought from that thought, better from worse, real from unreal, awake from asleep, Tony Parsons from Eckhart Tolle, whatever you think you're discerning to try to control this whole thing. Stop the relationship. Stop pushing and pulling on thoughts. Just see it as what it is. And that's where you rest, which is what you want. And, sometimes you have to exhaust yourself with this stuff. Like, sometimes you really do. I guess you just have to push for years and whatever, but it's not necessary or causal. What works is to actually stop, is stopping, seeing you can't do this. You can't do it in the way you're trying to do it because you can't make what is already be. It already is. You can't enter a room you've never left, And so in a lot of ways, like Tony Parsons is right on the money. It's kind of hopeless for the seeker, but whatever. Sometimes the seeker has to exhaust itself.
Because on the one hand, it's exactly like, on the one hand, I've just said it was always one whisper away. What we're talking about is one paper thin belief away. Yet it also at the same time seems like it was absolutely necessary for me to go through all the last decades of seeking, and meditating and trying and writing books and writing more books and realizing that thing I said wasn't really true anymore and then doing some more reading. It feels like that was both, that was somehow all necessary to get me to see it, to see. That was all necessary for me to see that none of it was necessary. Paradox. All
of it, paradox. That's why I was so excited to write the chapter on paradox. I was like, yes, because I live in paradox. Like I don't even know if I live here, but there's paradoxes everywhere. Everything's a paradox.
It's because anything. It's just because the way I look at it is that reality. I mean, real reality, whatever it is, the mystery. That you can't put words on that. When you put words on it, they're not really right. And therefore we end up with paradoxes because we've got things concepts banging up against concepts that don't actually refer to anything. So it's not surprising that we've got concepts because we've got paradoxes because You're trying to decide, for example, free will or determinism. Is there free will or determinism? Well, neither of these things actually refer to anything. So there's no point even trying to work it out, because free will doesn't refer to anything and neither does determinism refer to anything. These things have no reference in the world. It's all in thought. Paradox is only in thought. So who cares? Just have fun with it. It doesn't matter.
Right. You're limited by the apparatus of thought if you're trying to consider any of these things for some kind of ultimate reality. It's like the thing about materialists, like that there's a materialist hater thing that goes on in spirituality, like all those materialists are so bad. And I'm like, okay, and you think idealism is as a belief system and a view is helping you? It's not. That's what you're binding to. That's what you're holding on to. Let go of both.
Yeah.
Let go of all of it. Let go of your own need to understand and hold views. And let reality really just come forward. Tony Parsons has a great quote. Your true nature sits on your shoulder and watches you walk around looking for your true nature.
Oh, isn't it weird? It's so weird. Sometimes right now in this moment, it feels like, sometimes it feels like suffocatingly small. Like it's just this. Tiny little moment, and you're it's so intimate, it's almost, there's nothing here, and at the same time, this is so God, it's just like the it's like everything. This is probably what he means when he says nothing being everything or everything being nothing, whatever. It's like both nothing and everything. Yeah. And this must be so annoying for people going, what the hell is she talking? It must be so annoying. But maybe I also know that, this whole transmission thing it comes through. People can say
it does, for sure.
It comes through.
Yeah. The other thing that came to me when you were describing is Dogen has a lovely term called total exertion. And it's the universe or the cosmos or whatever you want to call it, is just totally exerting itself to come forward as this one sensation. That's it. In this sensation is contained all things, all experiences, everything and nothing, also in the sound and the movement and the breath. And you take one step and it's the first step that's ever been taken. Oh, God. Doesn't make sense, logically, and yet you feel it. It's like it's almost, well, to be honest, it's kind of ecstatic at times. In the body, you can feel the waves of, waves of ecstasy, and it's like, wow. Yeah. Yeah,
there's been a lot of sort of spontaneous bliss has been happening the last, just like, it used to be the case that you'd sit down and you'd get into a good mood and you'd think, I'm in a good mood because this happened. And you, of course, your mind would jump on that and say, oh yeah, you're in a good mood because of this. And you believe that. You believe that.
It's all relative. It's all relative. Like, I'm in a good mood now because that bad thing happened later and that's over.
Yeah.
But you're binding yourself into the time stream again.
Something. And if it doesn't know what it is, it'll make something up. Like, oh, it's hormones, or it's, whatever, or it's because I drank coffee, or that's why I'm in a good mood. It'll makes up some bullshit story about why you're in a good mood. But what's happening now is just, it's just bliss here right now. That's nice. It doesn't have to have a reason.
Doesn't have to have a reason, and you also there's nothing to hold on to it. That's the other beautiful thing, is from this neutrality we're talking about, which isn't apart from any experience, the bliss state or anything else. There's nothing to hold on to that. You don't have to go, oh God, I hope it doesn't go away. Why? You didn't create it, so you're not going to recreate it. And you're not going to make it stay. Like, it will come and it will go. Sadness will come and go. Sensations will come and go. The life of this body mind will come and go, and the stars will do what they do, and the galaxy will continue to rotate, and all of that is happening completely by itself, for no one, for nothing, no reason, and it's also contained right here within these immediate, intimate experiences. And so it's in a sense, it's just a symphony, and the more you don't put your finger on the scale, or just don't put your finger on the scale, let it be what it is. Let life does not need our help. It just does not need our help up here to put something over it and say, I know how it works, and I'm pushing here, that causes this and that. So I won't say that cause and effect don't exist, because it doesn't matter. The way you think about cause and effect, you'll get it wrong every time. It will become co-opted. The egoic movements will co-opt anything that you think in terms of like it's this versus that. So picking and choosing, all of that, you can just let it go. And it'll naturally happen when you go sit down at a restaurant. You'll naturally pick a salad versus this if that's what you pick. But that's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is don't just not resist, but like don't give in to the temptation to believe you can, through your own overlay, your own perceptions, your own beliefs, and which will always be distorted by preconceptions. Like, don't give into the belief that you're controlling reality through that, or yourself, or anything. You're just not. And just be willing to be humbled by that. And that's the humbleness and the mystery are kind of one and the same. They're interwoven, and it's a beautiful way to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that mystery thing.
Be lived. Yeah.
It's it's really brought the mystery aspect has really brought home to me the fact that there isn't a destination to get to, which I know people said that for ages. Oh, this goes on this goes on forever. The journey goes on, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, yeah, I know, but I still want the big one. I still want the awakening. I still want the enlightenment. I still want that thing. I still want that thing. And now I don't even want to use the word awakening or enlightenment anymore. It's just like, that is just another stupid concept. That is just something that's going to, my mind is just going to grab that and make that into something. I don't know. I don't know if I've awakened. I don't really care. It doesn't even make sense to talk about that. It doesn't matter anymore. That doesn't matter. There is no destination, because the mystery, it's like the acceptance of the mystery is the destination almost. That is the point. The point is to let go of the need for a destination is the point.
Absolutely.
And that is so freeing. It's like, what, you mean I don't have to do anything? You don't have to, I don't have to do anything? I don't, well, it's just this? Oh, thank Christ for that. So, life is beyond effortless.
And it's such a relief. Like that's the when people hear about the weight lifted, like for me it was very, I physically felt like something I had been carrying for so long that I really didn't realize I'd been carrying was just gone. And I realized it was extra, and I was carrying it by choice without realizing it. And then it was just so freeing to not have to seek anything, not to have to need anything, not have to construct something to chase. Seeking is so bizarre, because it's like you're holding the stick, there's a carrot at the end of the stick, and you just chase your own carrot. Okay, or you can just put the stick down, right? At some point, and that's what we're talking about. It's so nice to realize that you fundamentally don't need anything. You fundamentally don't need to fix the problem of you. That's grace, like, so beautiful.
Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
I'm excited that you have a philosophy history. I didn't even know it. And some, in the future, maybe we can talk again and talk about some of that, because again, just like music, like I saw breadcrumbs in that stuff. Plato's cave analogy for sure. Like right there, he's just going, he's like the whole thing is set up to create an illusion for us all, but there's a possibility of walking out of the cave and looking at the sun kind of thing. But there's clues everywhere, of course, even though a lot of it is very heady, but
all the way back. So bizarre. I mean, I have to say, like the self keeps coming back in. It's not gone. It's not gone forever. But it comes back in all the time. It comes back in. It comes back. It's been coming back in while I'm talking to you. It can hear it.
Is it a problem?
Sorry? No.
Is it a problem?
That's not a problem. Exactly. It's just like I can hear it. It's like now I can hear, and it's saying things to me like, I wonder if Angelo thinks you're really clever. What does he think of you? What do the people there think of you? What do they think? Do you think you're giving a good? Do you think you should have done your hair a bit better? Do you think? And it's almost like it's trying its hardest.
Yeah.
To snare me back in. Like, come on, there must be a thought. There must be some way. If I poke hard enough, she'll bite. And now it almost becomes funny to like watch the thoughts.
Yeah. And this is authenticity. What you're talking about is just authenticity. Like right now, you feel completely relaxed talking about this, right? But it's very interesting. And as I point out in my book, before this kind of shift, we identify so much with our thoughts that it would be so shameful to talk about our inner thoughts like that, right? But why? Why? There's no reason. It's just because we hide it from ourselves. Shame is a bizarre thing. It's just a tendency that says, don't look here, don't look here. There's something in you that's so accursed that if people saw it, and all it is thoughts. And when you state the thoughts to yourself, or you see them as thoughts, or you state them publicly, even, it's like, so what? It's a thought. Everyone has these thoughts. Obviously, everyone has thoughts like that. It just happens. They just come. And I like what you said, that they're almost like trying to grab your attention. Now, I won't say that there's actually someone or an ego mechanism that has will that's trying to screw you up. And yet you should never overlook the forces of delusion because they're strong. I sometimes say it's kind of like a magician. The ego is like a magician. Its job is to do two things. One is get your attention. So it stands on the side and just holds up thoughts and goes, okay, how about this one? You're completely worthless. Is that going to get your attention? You'll never amount to whatever, or whatever it is, like whatever thought works for you. That's where our nervous system operates. That's the one that'll keep coming back to get your attention until you're in that standing wave of opposition to a thought and mind identification. So its first job is sort of to get your attention. And then its job is to get you, once you believe that thought, it's like, okay, here's another one for you, and another one, another one, another one. And those are usually in the flavor of, yeah, here's the problem that you believe in now. Now that you've accepted this thought, you think you have a problem. Here's the solution, and I have it for you, right? So now we got to think about what to do about it. And that's it. It's that simple. If you just don't get on that thought train, that's it.
Amazing. Weird stuff. Here's a little here's a weird thing I wanted to mention. This is very strange. We have a log burning stove, and we get logs delivered, but we don't have any kindling, so we have to chop the logs into kindling. And I've always been absolutely rubbish at chopping kindling. I can't wield an axe. I've got no coordination, and I can't do it. I just can't hit it, can't do anything. So I always get my partner to chop the wood. Since this, I've become really good at chopping kindling. And I hadn't realised how much my thinking was getting in the way of me chopping kindling. So doing a physical activity like that, I had no idea that the reason I couldn't chop wood was because I thought I couldn't chop wood. And every time I swung that axe, it's a little bit like when you're driving and you suddenly become aware that you're driving and then you don't drive very well anymore. It needs to be instinctive. Now I can chop wood instinctively, and it's perfect every time. Bang, pew, bang.
I love it.
And that's a fairly kind of, I don't know, not superficial isn't the right word. It's a trivial thing, but where else does that exist in life? Where it's almost like the thoughts are getting in the way of just a simple activity that you'd think is completely like a physical, just a practical thing like chopping wood. Our minds get in there and, they don't really interfere, but
it's fascinating. And I think in a very gross way, it's been a lot of years, but I do remember that, like in a gross way, meaning there's literally so many thoughts that you're paying attention to, like you're watching an internal movie screen. You actually have trouble seeing the outside world sometimes. And I think that can cause all kinds of things, car accidents, and there's all kinds of things that can happen because of that. But yeah, even the physical coordination, if you're in there believing you're not good at this and you're sort of navigating your thoughts, and it's going to affect your ability to directly navigate the physical world with they require nuanced movements and so forth. And I can see that. But on a subtler level, even a personal level, I'll tell you, it's interesting. Like I've always still, after all this, I try to keep the willingness to always examine more and more subtle beliefs. And a lot of it has resulted in what I do with writing the book and so forth, because I think I had beliefs in the past that, working hard does equal awakening, like sitting for a long time, going to sesshin, being zen, whatever, that fell away when I see that doesn't really always work that way. There are people who wake up with very little or no work, and sometimes even spontaneously. So that belief is gone, blown out. Then it's like, well, do I have to talk in any spiritual terms at all about awakening to transmit it? Turns out I don't, pretty much. I mean, my book is reasonably non-spiritual, and I made it that way on purpose because what I saw was that there's a tribalism that goes on where, and I think I put this in my book somewhere, but if you start to read something or watch a video, your mind will look at it and go, is that me or not me? Is that my interest area or not? So the book, I tried to totally tune all of that out and talk directly to a human being. Doesn't matter what religion, what anything. And it turns out that actually works too. Like people wake up a lot now. I think from the book, I get it all the time. I get correspondence that it's working. And it's nothing magical. All it is I was willing to just keep examining beliefs that say, do I even need to use spiritual terms to talk about this possibility and show people how to do it? Turns out I don't. And all kinds of, like, most of the people I got correspondence from through the book initially, especially because of Zubin or Z-Dog MD, were scientific people and medical people. And those are not traditionally the people who, you see in like a lot of spiritual circles and that. It's so I'm still always looking like, is there even really subtle beliefs that subtly affect how I write, how I speak, that, and I keep going at that, like, I don't even know if it's active, to be honest, but it's an instinct now. It's an instinct now. And I think that's one way why this has worked for so many people. And there are many other teachers out there that are great teachers, and there are good practices in Zen and Dzogchen and all this stuff's out there. And people wake up through all that different stuff. But it amazed me how I've just really not used a lot of spiritual terminology. I've tried to talk very directly about my own experience and my experience working with others and use very common terminology and language. And it turns out it works just fine.
Yeah.
You don't need a tradition necessarily. You don't need a certain way of speaking, a certain jargon. You don't even need precision, And I can talk in the emotional spectrum, and I can talk in a human spectrum. Like, this is something, this is possible. And they won't get past that sentence if they're not interested in waking up. Their mind will just tune it out. They'll go on about their business, and 3 years later, they'll come back and pick the book up again. But once you realize, like, hey, yeah, I actually have been suffering, and someone tells you, just look, it's there. Doesn't matter who you are, it's there. It's because it's you. That can work for anyone. Of course it can. But they kind of have to be ready and all that. I wouldn't push it on anyone. But what an amazing thing. Doesn't matter. Materialist, idealist, intelligent, not intelligent, spiritual, not spiritual, work hard, don't work hard. I don't care. Doesn't matter. It's your true nature. You know what I mean? Like, wow, this possibility for anyone who wants, ultimately, do you want to get under your suffering and just get more in line with truth? Not in line with it, but letting go of trying to be in line with anything until truth just comes forward. Reality comes forward, whatever you want to call it. And that amazes me.
So what you're talking about with your own writing there is sort of almost like a deeper and deeper, for want of a better word, level of authenticity. It's sort of like a dropping away of subtle beliefs that are still there. So it gets almost, in a sense, truer and truer and more authentic.
Yeah. I wanted to be able to stand almost in a way, to write the book in such a way, the first chapters especially, that I can literally turn around and stand in the view of anyone reading it.
Yeah.
And I actually thought through that, or felt through that as I wrote it. Like, who might this turn off? Like, would this turn off a blue collar person, a white collar person? Would this turn off an intellectual? Would it turn off a spiritual person? Would it turn off someone who's been victimized by supposed spiritual teachers? Would it turn off somebody who's very independent? And I really cared about that. I felt into that, so that I really want it to be for you, for you, because, and it feels like love. And it also felt like, what would I have wanted to read when I was 16 and just suffering, 17, 18, 19, 20. So those were kind of the components, but it turned out through all of that simple, direct language and warm human communication is all that's needed.
Yeah. No. So what do you
And speaking from a place of truth, that it really does happen.
So I'm really fascinated by this, because I write too, and I kind of try to do what you're talking about, to just I just try and tell the utter truth in that moment as I see it. That's basically how I write. I think probably most writers do, non-fiction writers.
Yeah.
They just tell the absolute purest truth they see in that moment. But what do you think? Because what do you think's going on, or do we not need to know? I don't know. But what do you think's going on with this business of transmission? It's a spooky thing.
You know what it is? I mean, in one sense, that's actually a very easy question for me to answer.
Okay.
there's a person, how can I say this? Let me say this. Okay, there's a person I know of who is completely empty of self. Like the realization is very, very clear,
Yeah.
and essentially complete from the standpoint of the individual that literally just stops functioning. Now, again, it continues on and it carries itself forward, as Dogen says very, very nicely. No trace continues endlessly. It carries itself forward. So, but this is a person who disappeared out of public life as far as any kind of spiritual teaching. He doesn't put himself forward like that at all, and yet he has a pretty popular YouTube channel where I won't give anything away, but he does something that would surprise you in this channel. And it's not about spirituality. And yet when I watch it, I can see I can feel the transmission. It's so fascinating in the way he moves the camera, in the way it's just so what it is for me is the loudest. When I talk to somebody like Adyashanti, Lisa Cairns, Violet, when I talk to somebody who's what I would say is truly empty of self, the loudest thing to me is what's not there. They're still human, and they're in a sense more warmly human because nothing's getting in the way of that mammalian warmth and the presence and aliveness. And they have a personality and a distinct personality, and yet that's not what I hear. I hear emptiness shouting right in my face, and it's what's not there that's the loudest thing in the room. And that's true. That's true across the board of every experience for me.
That makes sense.
And when that's coming forward, it just attunes people to it. So, to put it in a more practical sense, what I think we don't realize is that in one sense, the most distorted thing humans do is communicate. The way we communicate about self, we communicate about relational self, us, like as a relationship. We identify with various groups we're in. We talk about that. We complain. We endorse others. We go into complicity. It's mind identification isn't just an internal process. It's both internal and external. And that is so binding, and it's so continuous that when it's not there, through a conversation, through listening to a video, reading a book by someone who wrote it, who is not transmitting through that, and strangely using that apparatus, language, something powerful comes through. So it's actually quite obvious that when I'm talking, I'm not using language in the way language was designed. I'm not trying to give you anything, even if it sounds like not you, but anyone listening. I'm not trying to give you anything, even though it will sound like I'm trying to give you something. I'm not endorsing your story, even though you might think and feel like I'm endorsing your story. I do love you, but I don't love you in the way you think I do. And it's like all of that is coming through, even though I don't need to say it, because I'm literally misusing language. Language is designed to communicate things about space and time. I'm using language to help you turn inward and find that place that is timeless and does not exist.
Even as you're just saying that, oh my God, Angelo, the transmission as you're saying that is just like, wow.
So transmission definitely happens, and it's very powerful from some people. I can't know if it is for me. I really can't know. I just don't know. I have no way of knowing. I can't look inward and see that, but like I know what it feels like to be around someone like Adyashanti. It's just like, okay, full on. Like, and this is really interesting. And I think realization has to be kind of deeper before this gets really obvious, or it was for me. And that is someone who's really, really clear, like Adyashanti, he'll come across as quite human, actually quite natural. And I think a lot of people overlook that because they think, oh, he's not really. Or Eckhart Tolle is another good example. But what I've often said to people who initially I said, have you read Adyashanti, Emptiness Dancing or something? And they go, I've read it. I don't really like his stuff. And I go, okay, well, wait a year after we chat for a year, then go back and read it. And they'll go back and read it and they're like, oh my God, you weren't kidding. Like my mind was not ready to see that, So it can be completely overlooked when the ego just doesn't get it. It just goes on tilt or something. But the more you tune into it, the more it really becomes like, okay, yeah. And then, as you said, you start to see it not just in people though. Then you start to see it and hear it and feel it in art and other expressions in nature. Nature's a huge one. And then even later on, it starts to come through even in delusion, even in the complicity and all that stuff, even in the mundane conversation you'd rather not be in because the person's complaining and all that. Then it even starts transmitting through that. And that's where powerful transmission comes in. There's a thing called in Zen called Tozan's 5 ranks. It's very fascinating. It's about relative and absolute. But he has this thing between third and fourth rank. And the third rank is like coming from within the absolute. Like you can transmit directly as the absolute and speak in those terms very powerfully. But the fourth is different because then you don't need to talk only in the absolute. It's both absolute and relative. So you can actually communicate the absolute and relative simultaneously. And he calls the first one enlightened behavior and the second one powerful enlightened behavior, because it's like being sneaky. It's like sneaking up on somebody. It's we're talking about teaching now in a sense, but it's the phrase my garden, the beauty of my garden is invisible. It just comes through even in the most mundane conversation sometimes. And there's such a beauty to that. But again, it's not exalted, special. It's nothing like that. It comes from complete vulnerability and a willingness to completely share someone else's suffering space with them. 100%. Like when I talk to somebody, there's nothing going, oh God, I hope they don't talk about trauma or something I can't, even subconsciously, like I will go as deep as they want to go every time. And I'll go right there with them and I will feel the suffering with them and I don't need to change it. And for some reason that works. There's something about that acceptance, I think, that helps start orienting the person to their own acceptance. And so there are a lot of ways I think transmission happens, but
that's really I find that absolutely fascinating. And just as you're talking, I mean, goodness, the transmission of what you were saying then was just incredible. And in a sense, I get a feeling that when you talk like that, Angelo, it's like any remaining bits of me just disappeared, and it's really like you and I are just, I don't know, it's a real connection. I can't even use the word connection. That's like two things are connected. It's like the separation is just gone. It's like, and it is like truth talking to truth. It's like, well, obviously the transmission's obvious because it's just truth. It's just all here. So what you're and you're so close to that. You're so close to truth in the way you speak that it can't help but come through because there's almost nothing in the way.
Yeah, and again, it's important to point this out. It's very strange that there's no self. There's no like. This isn't false modesty. I can't really know that except for when it comes up in the conversation.
So when somebody says something like that to you, there's no part of you that goes, "I'm a big clever Angelo."
Not at all.
No.
In fact, I'm always inclined to say, I'm really like. Well, I like when people give appreciation because I think it's good for anyone to just appreciate anything, whether it's me, their spouse, anything. And so that the coming forward of appreciation, I like that. I enjoy it, but there's no one here that it could be about, because I know the only thing they can actually be experiencing is their own presence. I know that. I'm not saying it to make someone feel better. You wake up because you wake up. That's you're waking up to your own true nature. It's not, I didn't do that. I really didn't. There could be a reflection happening, sure, but like, how much do you thank the lake surface for reflecting your reflection? I mean, it's just what happens. So, and by the way, like when you speak, I feel the same thing, like for sure. And that's why I love interviewing people like right after these shifts, because it just comes through so powerfully. And it is, I can tell it's also humble. It's like, there's nothing special. That's what we're talking about. That's the beauty of this, is we've let go somehow, or figured out a way to let go of that specialness, needing to understand, construct, a paradigm of the world that makes me feel better, realizing that's just a fool's game. And somehow all of a sudden, damn, nothing needed fixed in the first place. Wow. Who would have thought that? And it's just beautiful. I'm actually excited to see what you write. I know you're going to write some pretty amazing stuff later on. I'm guessing. We'll see.
Okay. You've really, I didn't hear the last thing you said, because
I was just saying, I think at some point you will write something again, and I'm excited to see how you transmit, because you're gonna, and we'll see how it goes.
Right now it feels,
you're gonna transmit.
I've written I don't know how many books now, and I've got a whole membership of 500 people, and I've got big mailing list and everything, and at this point, I'm being completely honest with all of anybody who's watching this. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know where to go. I'm so glad this happened at the end of the year when I'd finished the work that I'd done for my membership people, because I don't know. I used to write every single day, and now I'm just like, what do I? Something to say. I can't just say it's just this a million times. It's just this. No, it's just this. No, it's just this. Just surrender. It's just this. No, nothing. There's just nothing going on. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know what to talk about. Maybe, but at some point it'll. That's a worry. Of
Oh
course,
yeah.
there's another worry. There's another thought popping in to say,
Mhm.
what are you
Yeah.
going to do now? Because you're supposed to be a writer and you've got nothing to write about.
Mm.
Doesn't matter. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Whatever happens will
Mhm.
happen, and it'll all be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm excited for your group actually, or
Yeah.
they're going to get so much out of this, and it can just take so many different turns. That's why I say I'm excited, because to see it or see how it unfolds, because I don't know and you don't know. Nobody knows, but it will unfold in some beautiful way, I'm sure, and will be amazing. And boy, all these people that know you are going to be on this ride with you now. Wow, that's great. So cool. And they'll go on their own rides. You'll see it happening.
How
It'll
it's.
just happen. It does. Yeah.
Oh dear.
I really appreciate this time. It's been cool. I didn't know much about you, including, and I apologize that you were an author. So
But we didn't talk about it. No reason why should I? Yeah. No reason. I like.
yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. And yeah, I would think it would be really cool to talk about this again at some point, or talk about just life and philosophy and whatever that comes up at some point in the future. Do you want me to? I can link your books. You want, if let me know what. Well, we can talk after this, and you can tell me if there's anything you want me to link under the video or.
Well, the books I've written on sleep are under my name, but the books on the wall up there, the ones I've kind of written on magic, they're under a different name, Genevieve Davis. I have a pen name, Genevieve Davis. Um,
Cool.
so Sasha Stevens, you'll find books written about sleep, but my other books are written under pen names because many years ago I was
Okay.
ashamed of my writing and blah blah blah, and had this big story about
Yeah.
my clever friends wouldn't think I was clever if I was writing books about magic, so I created a pen name.
Mm.
And amazing. So
I think that could be really helpful to people who have insomnia, though. I mean, it's a common thing. So we'll put the links to those as well. And been a real pleasure.
it's been really good. I could talk about this for hours, but probably we are going to get a bit tired
Yeah.
now. So yeah, thanks so much for
Mm.
talking to me, Angela. It's been an honor. I know that won't big you up and you won't get a rush of pride when I say that, but I'll say it anyway.
Dopamine. Oh, wait a minute. 3 molecules of dopamine were just released into my brain.
Yeah, it's been an honor. It's been brilliant.
So
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
thank you so much. Really great conversation. Okay,
Bye.
talk
Bye.
soon. Bye.